I'd like to call this meeting to order. If you'd all please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can we have roll call?
Commissioner Antuna?
Present.
Commissioner Bedstead?
Here.
Commissioner Cunningham?
Here.
Commissioner Hinkle?
Here.
Chair Hatcher?
Present. Given the current shelter-in-order place covering the state of California and the social distancing guidelines issued by federal, state, and local authorities, the city is implementing changes to participate in the Planning Commission meetings until notified otherwise. The council chambers will be open to the public, but we will be implementing social distancing policies and will limit the number of people who may be in the council chambers. All attendees are required to wear masks to enter the council chambers. The meeting will be webcast and accessed at the city's website. Members of the public are encouraged to participate in the meetings by accessing the website, providing written comments on the same website, participating by phone, or coming to the commission meeting in person, although we are only accommodating 16 guests at one time. Planning Commission reorganization. Dave, do you want to comment?
Yes, Planning Commission reorganization is a fancy way to say that it's time to select a new chairperson and vice chair or chair pro tem. Going back a couple of years to December of 2018, that was the last time a Planning Commission reorganization occurred, and that was where the current structure was set. At the time, there was discussion, and it looks like acceptance of a rotation concept where the chair would be selected, and then the next experienced person would become the vice chair, and then upon the next rotation, the vice chair would become the chair, and so forth. So it looked like there was agreement there, but it has not become a formally established policy, and so it was safest to put the item on your agenda and have you take that action. And my intention, regardless of what you do this evening, is to work on bringing you back something in the next few months, but certainly before the 2022 reorganization, which provides a little more structure on when the reorganization is supposed to occur and how the rotation would work if you still want to do that at the time. So with that, I will hand it back to your commission, and you would need to nominate, second, and vote on both chair and chair pro tem.
Okay. So following those guidelines, I will nominate Chair Hinkle or Commissioner Hinkle to be the next chairperson.
I'll second.
Okay, looks like we have a nomination by Chair Hatcher and second by Commissioner Cunningham for Paul Hinkle to become the next chair.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Chair Hatcher for pro tem.
I think the next person in line would be Michael.
Well, according to the minutes, it was the top two longest committee members.
Oh.
Okay, from what I can get from this, and from the most senior members on this. So that's what I got out of this from the minutes from that meeting, and that's what everybody was discussing. Okay. So when I went back and reread this, it came up that there would be a rotation between the two senior commissioners for the chair and chair pro tem.
Commissioner Altuna, my understanding, I could be incorrect, my understanding from Commissioner Altuna when she brought that forward was that we would do like city council and it would go through in order, starting at most senior and go down each year, every 2 years changing. So basically it would have went from me to you, then to Mike, then to Brandon, then to Alma, or Alma then Brandon, sorry. That was how I understood it. Commissioner Antuna, can you confirm that was your understanding?
Yes, that is correct. Initially, when we made this motion, it was to mimic similar to what council has done in the past, wherein there is a rotation, and we had petitioned to do the same in this case, where you are correct. It would be a chairperson would be elected, and then the vice chair would be the most senior, and then rotate every 2 years. So in this case, yes, my understanding would be that Paul would be chair, and then Michael would be vice chair.
Yeah. That was my understanding. So,
And
Okay, so I'll withdraw my
that was
motion then.
also
That's-
mine.
okay. Okay, so with that in mind, do you want to nominate Michael for pro tem?
So move, so move.
And I'll second. We're gonna go with Paul. We like to confuse you, you know? No, I'm the second. I'm the second. No, Cunningham to be pro tem. Yeah. Turn your mic on.
I'm sorry.
That's okay,
We
none of that
we
was
should just start that all over again. I bet I still mess it up.
Who's on first?
We have a motion by Commissioner Hinkle and a second by Chair Hatcher for Commissioner Cunningham to become Chair Pro Tem.
Yes.
Got it. I think at this point, unless our attorney recommends otherwise, you can probably take both of those in a single motion.
Oh.
Okay, here we go. Commissioner Hinkle,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Antuna,
Yes.
Commissioner Bedstead,
Yes.
and Chair Hatcher.
Yes,
Did I get it all?
that was it.
All right, I think we're good.
So now we're gonna
Now
rotate.
you can rotate seats, or we can rotate plaques. It's at your leisure.
Doesn't matter.
Just rotate plaques.
We'll rotate plaques.
Okay, we need a, motion for minutes, approval of minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from last month's meeting.
Second.
Second.
Do we have who was the first second? Who was the first second? Okay. We have a motion to approve the minutes for the December 17th meeting by Commissioner Hatcher, and a second by Commissioner Bedstead. Commissioner Hatcher,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Bedstead,
Yes.
Commissioner Antuna,
Yes.
and Chair Hinkle.
Yes. Okay, is there any planning commission member comments? Okay, at this time, we'll move to business from the floor. Staff will state what is in front of us. If there's a developer involved, they will follow up and give their presentation. then the floor will be opened up to the public, those for and those against. And at the end of that, it'll come back to the commission to make a decision on how they want to move on the project that's in front of us. First one, item 2 on the agenda is consider approval for CUP 2020-008, a request for a conditional use permit allowing for the construction of a gas station and plus or minus 4,500 square foot convenience store with a type 21 beer, wine, and distilled spirits alcohol beverage control license at 984 West Shaw. Stephen G. Sanders, trustee of Steve G. Sanders Trust, owner, and Randall Mathias, applicant and representative. Staff?
Good evening, Chair Hinkle and members of the Commission. So on this item tonight, at the request of the applicant, staff would like to request a continuance of this item to a date uncertain. At that time, a future hearing will require appropriate public noticing. The reason for the continuance is, if you recall from your packet, the convenience store was going to be on a portion of a greater 5-acre site, and they've actually decided to come back altogether with a greater project that's going to include other uses. And it would just be more efficient to run the conditional use permit all as one cohesive project versus kind of standalone. So that's the purpose of and the reason for the continuance. The applicant is here this evening if you have any questions. Otherwise, staff would recommend a continuance.
Does anybody want to hear from the developer? Any discussions by commission? Okay. Motion to continue?
I'll make a motion to continue this item to a date uncertain.
I'll second the motion.
Sorry, motion by Commissioner Hatcher, second by Commissioner Bedstead to continue conditional use permit 2020-08. Commissioner Hatcher?
Yes.
Commissioner Bedstead?
Yes.
Commissioner Antuna?
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham?
Yes.
And Chair Hinkle?
Yes.
Just want to note for the record real quick, if the project does come back in a substantially different form and so forth, it'll need to be, re-noticed and brought before you, but in case the same project comes back, it has been continued, so.
Okay. All right, moving to item 3. Resolution, it's OA2021-002, a request to amend the standards of the R1 MD single-family residential medium density zone district and the general property development and use standards in conjunction with the adoption of objective standards for the development of single-family residential housing projects. Applicant is City of Clovis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. This item, as noted, is a request to consider really two items that we're presenting together. The first component is the objective design and development standards for single-family residential development. And the second are a related set of amendments to the development code, which will incorporate those objective standards. A little bit of background in terms of how we got here. State law requires that objective standards be adopted and applied to qualifying housing development applications. There were a set of multifamily standards that were adopted by the City Council back in December of 2019. And as I mentioned, the current proposal is to adopt single-family objective standards into action so that they can be applied if necessary as qualifying projects come up. As noted, there are a set of development code amendments proposed where necessary to eliminate inconsistencies. That's really an effort to avoid having a set of objective standards that say one thing and then having the ordinance say another thing. The objective standards themselves would apply to projects comprised of one or more single-family units. So that's basically just about all types of single-family development. But they don't apply to projects that are proposed or approved in the Planned Residential Development Zone, or the PRD zone, which is really in front of the commission where the bulk of the subdivision activity occurs. And so that wouldn't trip the requirement for the application of objective standards. Where they're proposed, the standards relate primarily to the design of subdivision maps, but they also deal with the placement of homes on individual lots. So there's criteria that apply at the subdivision level as well as at the individual lot level. The majority of these standards come from the existing development code, the city standards and specifications, and a series of past actions that are expressed through policy and practice. So for the most part, we're not inventing new criteria here. We're pulling forward criteria that already exist into a single document and making sure that they exist as objective standards as required by the state. There are, though, a few instances where the standards reflect changes from existing requirements, namely in the development code, and those require code amendments in order to avoid any inconsistencies that exist. As I'll show you in a little bit here, those really are focused on the R1 MD zone, which is the residential zone that allows lots as small as 4,500 square feet, so a little bit smaller than the typical R1 standard. The standards that apply to subdivision maps deal with issues like dedications and street improvements, utility design and installation requirements, sewer and water principally, and grading and drainage features. These standards were presented and rolled into this application or this package through mostly our engineering department, with some feedback and assistance from public utilities and fire departments, as well as some other folks as well. Traditionally, you would see these kind of criteria applied as conditions of approval on tentative maps that came before you. So again, they're not primarily new features, they're existing features that have been presented as conditions of approval. Where the standards relate to home and lot design, there are traditional kinds of development standards that relate to building setbacks and height, driveway and parking configurations, and fencing. So those first three items are really straight out of the code. There's not a whole lot of variation there. The fourth criteria there, exterior design and aesthetics. That's the kind of thing that we would apply at what's called the Residential Site Plan Review, or RSPR process, in the Planned Residential Development Zone. So after the commission has approved a subdivision in a PRD, at the staff level, we approve something called an RSPR, and that's where these sort of exterior design and aesthetic criteria for homes would be placed. So an example is ensuring, to the extent possible, that air conditioning units are placed out of view. That's kind of a common criteria. And then the last bullet point there is a new standard that would ensure that trash receptacles are placed in the rear yards of houses, and that an all-weather path would be placed from that rear yard up to the curb. And as you probably know, that's been a touch point with your commission, incorporated into many individual projects, and this would simply standardize that requirement and make it part of the objective standards. So I've talked a little bit about development code amendments. Really, those are focused on the R1 MD zone for the most part. The R1 MD zone is a single-family residential zone. It's a little different and really not used a whole lot, but it does allow lots up to, or down to, let's say, 4,500 square feet. And really, in terms of working with the development community, they've been focused on the criteria that are applied to these smaller lots. And so a good deal of the interaction that we've had has been with regard to what kind of standards exist for lots that go below 6,000 square feet. So some of the changes are actually, I think all of the changes that are proposed are laid out here on the next two slides. This first slide talks about reduced setbacks. So the front setback to living space is reduced from 15 feet to 10 feet. The garage setback is reduced from 20 feet down to 18 feet to the garage and 20 foot to the garage door. Side setbacks are reduced from 5 feet in general down to 4 foot on the garage side and 3 feet on the other side or the interior side. I know that is an item that has gotten a lot of discussion with the commission over, at least since I've been here the last year and a half or so. We've worked quite a bit with the fire department in terms of what really is their standard, what are they comfortable with. The numbers there that are presented are the joint recommendations from across staff, including from the public safety folks, and standards that the council has also been willing to approve as projects are presented to them. So we know that there may be some hesitation, or at least there has been some hesitation on saying those kinds of setbacks, but that is the recommendation from staff. And if you have different feedback that you'd like to present to council, we would simply take that to the council in that manner. And the final item there on setbacks is a reduction in the rear yard from 15 feet to 10 feet. All of these standards are intended together to make it easier to place traditional homes on lots that are getting a little bit smaller and add flexibility to the lot layout process. Similarly, the parcel coverage is proposed to increase from 45% to 55%. The prohibition on the use of tandem garages to satisfy the 2-car parking requirement is proposed to be eliminated. So a tandem garage basically is 1 car parked behind the other. So the hesitation on that in general over the years is that front, the stall furthest away from the street, if you will, or closest into the house is kind of locked, and it's less usable. But again, one of the trade-offs of encouraging density and smaller lots is to be able to use alternate strategies, and so that's what this recommendation reflects. And there is also a reduction to reduce the garage size from a 22-foot wide garage down to a 20-foot wide to end up with a 20 by 20 garage. And again, that's a standard that's been used pretty consistently in the PRD zone when we get lots that are a little bit smaller than the traditional 6,000 square foot lot. The objective standards have been out for public review since mid-October, and really the comments that came in boil down to really two issues. The first is that request that the city consider a garage size of 18 feet in width. We've looked at that issue quite a bit, and there have been some instances in the city of Clovis where a very similar size garage, let's call it 18 by 20, has been allowed on an exception basis in the planned residential development zone when proposed by a specific, in conjunction with a specific project. We looked a little more broadly, and looked at what other cities were doing, wherever we could find examples of other cities that quantified their garage sizes, and we really found that at least a 20 by 20, if not larger, was the norm. But there are at least a handful of examples where smaller garages were permitted by cities as part of their quantified standards. So we don't want to suggest that looking at something as small as 18 by 20 is never done, because in fact, we, the city of Clovis, have done it, and other cities have also quantified it. It does tend to be the exception, and tends to be done in communities where development pattern is more dense. However, staff is not recommending it at this point, because as we look at the ramifications of reduced garage width, we notice that unless you have two very small vehicles, it's pretty tough to get two sort of standard Clovis vehicles into that width of a garage and still be able to open the doors and get people in and out. And to have any storage at the end of that is pretty, if not impossible, at least pretty tough. You have to kind of go to a vertical hanging storage in a garage. And as people tend to use their garages less and spill out into the driveways, which are also becoming shorter, and streets which are becoming narrower, that cumulatively it doesn't necessarily add to the quality of the neighborhood in the way that we're looking for. So measured as a whole, we don't think it's a good idea at this point, but we're also not suggesting that it's a standard that couldn't work. as there are examples where it does. The second public comment is expressed as attachment 4 to your staff report on this item through a letter from the BIA. It's really a request that the city consider standards for compact single-family development with lots as small as 1,800 square feet. And 1,800 square feet sounds really small, right? Particularly when we're talking about the next standard being a 4,500 square foot lot. Really what we're talking about there is the elevation style home on about that size lot, or a townhome size project with individually owned lots, of which we have seen several examples over the last few years at least. So our observations as staff is that compact residential development really has been routinely approved in Clovis over the last several years, and that establishing consistent standards for compact single-family development has the potential to further streamline the process for these projects, which is really what both the city and the state are after, to make the development process more transparent and streamlined. That having been said, the creation of a new zone district is likely to require the creation of a new zoning district is likely required in order to implement those kinds of standards. Because we don't really just at this point have the tools in our ordinance to implement objective standards for something as small as 1,800 square feet. And there are some development criteria, so things like open space, for instance. When you get to a very small lot or compact development scale development, which is traditionally in Clovis approved through the PRD process, where the discussion of amenities comes forth and the incorporation of open space into the project is balanced with lot size. If we're looking at objective standards, we would need to build open space into the objective standards so that the quality of life for those neighborhoods is maintained as the lot sizes shrink. So the staff does not necessarily object to the concept of a new zone district or objective standards for that compact style development, but we'd like to bring that back as a separate item where we can focus on it and have a dialogue about what needs to be included. The staff recommends that the Commission adopt a resolution recommending approval of both the objective standards and the development code amendments that are identified in Ordinance Amendment 2021-02. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Trying to think how to word this. As to the 4-foot side yard setback, has staff done any research at all on garbage totes and how they're either going to have to be put into a garage or put on the side of the house? My very limited research shows that my totes are 42 inches wide. And if we stay with 48, that leaves 6 inches to install a latch on one side and hinges on the other side. Has any research been done, or have you checked into that to see that that's acceptable?
We know that the standard has been adopted for a handful of subdivisions in the community. And I think there's sometimes a trick with putting in a gate that would accommodate the totes. And as has been acknowledged, there oftentimes would not be sufficient room to put both a person and the tote in the same space. And so the tote's got to be removed in order to allow a person to pass. But in terms of can it work as a minimum standard, I think the city has determined that it can.
And by saying the city, are you saying the planning development, or are you saying that city council has?
Yeah, the standard has been approved by the city council, and in terms of planning and development staff as well as public safety staff, it's been determined to be an acceptable minimum standard.
Okay. Okay, I'm a little confused on why we're addressing it if it's already the standard.
It's a standard that's been approved, through the PRD zone.
Okay,
And as we talked about, this would apply, to the R1 MD,
okay,
as a part of our objective standards. So, and I think probably a ramification of this was not necessarily intended, is that if these reduced setbacks are codified for the R1 MD, then they will probably be viewed as the baseline, for developments throughout of a similar size. So, for instance, if the R1 MD allows this setback for a 4,500 square foot lot, and a developer comes through and proposes 4,500 square foot lots in a planned residential development, then he's going to look back and say, well, your baseline objective standard is a 4 and a 3, so that's what I want to do here, and that would probably carry a fair amount of weight. So I think you could look at it as, for an equivalent size lot, this would become the minimum standard.
You may be correct, Mr. Merchant. My experience in the limited time I've been on this commission, however, is when we say we want a minimum standard for this zone district, and we accept it, then all of a sudden, we're getting a lot more presentations about this standard in other areas. So my concern is, I'm looking at quality of life. Clovis has a certain reputation. I'm looking at quality of life. We want to put those totes somewhere. And if we can't put them on the side of the residence, then they're going to have to go in the garage. But we're reducing that size too. So I'm kind of in a quandary here as to that specific thing. Hoping for some help.
Yeah, Commissioner Cunningham, I think we have looked at that issue pretty substantially, and the staff recommendation is to go with the 4 and the 3. And as I noted, it is, we understand that there's been a kind of an extended dialogue about that, and that it may not be a universally appreciated standard, but after looking at it, we feel like that's the right setback to go with this set of development standards on a smaller lot. So that certainly does not limit your ability to recommend an alternative setback. You have that within your purview, but what's presented to you is our recommendation.
Thank you.
This may sound like a crazy question, but on the small, do all of the toters, are they all the same size for every house now built in Clovis? Does everyone get that? Because I know, like, I have the large ones, I'm on a larger lot, but I've seen where people have smaller totes. I mean, is there a requirement that everybody has to get a large tote? Can we make it where they just get a smaller tote?
I think there is an option for a smaller tote. Sean, do you know the answer to that?
I think all residents have the ability to call finance and either request the larger or the smaller one, and their billing is adjusted likewise.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I was just curious if they're all, I mean, if you live in such a smaller household, I would assume you would hopefully have less trash, so it might make more sense if you had a smaller tote. Because I know we have this issue every month about the size of the side yards and the totes.
Right.
But since it seems to, and I understand your point, Commissioner Cunningham, but at the same time, if it seems to be that they're always approved to have 4 and 3, it doesn't make sense to make them come every single time for the same development request.
No,
if, you know, so you're kind of at a quandary on that.
No, and my only point is, if we've already decided, if the city council's already decided this is acceptable, as I understand Mr. Merchant has related, then it's something that we shouldn't even have to deal with, is it?
Well, it's just because it's going to make it the standard for this particular.
Okay, but we're dealing with semantics, or how many angels on the head of a pin.
Yeah.
If the council has already made that standard, then we shouldn't have to address it. That's all I'm saying.
I guess I'll just weigh in and say that I know we've debated this quite often, and I know I'm one who the precedent setting makes things very challenging for us at times, you know, so I'm a big proponent of establishing some standards, but I have seen, quite an increase in toters sitting out, just in my observations being around town. So, as you're saying, Commissioner Cunningham, is it a standard? I always thought we were approving these things as exceptions, and clearly the council has saluted those exceptions and they've been approved, but I guess this is the first time I'm hearing it's truly a quote-unquote standard. I always took it as this is a variance that we were evaluating as part of a site plan. And so I know a lot of the times as I sat here to evaluate those, I was looking at what's proposed in front of us, where is this particular lot? Sometimes the lots themselves were not conducive to larger lot sizes, and so the developers had to be creative, and that inherently resulted in the need or the ask for some of these smaller setbacks. So I guess that's where I'm maybe like you, all fussing a little bit with what it is that we thought we were doing versus a true standard. I guess so that was really more of a comment, but my other question is, I want to make sure, Dave, I got this right. We're saying that a tandem single-car garage would be permissible. Did I hear that correctly, or you're saying no, it would not?
The change is that the development code currently specifies that a tandem orientation is not acceptable, and that would be eliminated. And so a tandem garage, which is roughly a 10 by 40 garage, would be allowed as the two-car garage. And
pardon me, I'm just processing through this. Many of the tandem garages I see are typically 3-car. They're 2-car where one is double deep.
Right.
So now I'm envisioning a single car with a double deep garage. And as you comment, you know, that front tandem garage typically is locked. You're typically not gonna see two people park 2 cars in there unless the car in the front very seldomly moves. And so that does create some concerns for me with spillover onto the street and plethora of vehicles sitting outside. So I just wanted to clarify that I heard that correctly. Thank you.
Commissioner Atuna, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Yes, I was just waiting my turn. Yeah, I'm in agreement with Commissioner Cunningham and Brandon also, because it was my understanding that these were exceptions, not the standard. I hear what the city's saying, that they've spoken to everyone, and it sounds like everybody's good with a 4 and 3, but I tend to agree, like I said, with Commissioner Cunningham, that not being able, having to pull your totes out to get to your backyard, it's kind of the same thing as a tandem garage. Having to always go out and move your car because the person who parked in front of you needs to get out, it's such an inconvenience. And I'm just wondering how it'll be used. I'm wondering if the totes will sit outside, because I personally would not want to have to move my totes every time I wanted to get into my backyard from the side gate. And I would like to possibly, when we motion, to have a different recommendation, possibly for both those items. I just don't know how the rest of the commission feels. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Dave, I'd like to thank you and the planning department. This has been a thorn in my side, is the all-weather pathways. Thank you guys for putting that in there. Most of the time with tandems out front is because they don't have that. So that's going to solve a lot of those problems. One thing people like about Clovis is that we do things a little different that makes Clovis stand out and makes us better than the other towns around us. And this 4-foot side yard I have a real problem with. The first thing and the most important thing that I have a problem with is first responders getting into the backyard. If you have to move those totes, that's seconds that you're not able to get back to the backyard to do what you need to do. And people can die in seconds. I'm one of those funny people too. I have a police scanner. I listen a lot to what's going on in Clovis. Many times our officers go into the backyard to research something and they don't want to be heard or seen. And by moving the totes, that eliminates that. So the most important thing about this 4-foot side yard is the first responders in the police department trying to do something, and they're not going to be able to do that anymore under these projects. So I would go along with the rest of the commissioners that we should probably make a motion to change the 4-foot back to the 5-foot. But that is the most important thing because we're talking about lives. I don't care about the BIA recommending that it be 4. Okay, that's great. They can do that. But let's be concerned about our citizens and their lives. What comes first? And I think we need to think about that on it. One of the drawings or pictures that we have on page 64, if any of you want to look it up, we talk about swing garages and tandem garages. And I'm going to assume that that swing garage is the 18 by 20, not a single car garage on that. Just want to clarify that and make sure, because the tandem kind of offsets it, makes it look like it might be smaller. But I just wanted to confirm that that was a double car garage, 2-car garage like we've always.
Yeah, the swing is a standard, in this case, 20 by 20.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes. Okay. And on the garages, something to always think about. Today in Clovis, it's not all the cities, but Clovis, 3/4 of the vehicles sold in Clovis are SUVs and pickups. So when we talk about reducing the size of these garages, what are we going to do? Now, in 2035, we're not going to have to worry about it because there won't be any more of them. But today we have a problem, and we have to park these vehicles somewhere. And I know someone who has a new pickup's going to want to park it inside and not leave it outside in 4 days of rain. Also, we have the problem of today they have to have charging stations inside the garages. So with the tandem garage and the 2-car garage, we have the problem of where we locate that charging station. So that's all that I have on this right now. And again, I'm against the 4-foot side yard setback. Any more discussion from the?
Just so you know, on here for number 6, it says that a swing garage is a minimum of 10 feet by 20 feet. So I don't know if that's a typo, but on here it says 10 by 20.
That's,
Yeah. And so this is just right now for medium density, correct? This isn't for low density, this isn't for medium high, this is just, we're looking at this just for the medium density.
This is just for the R1MD zone,
Okay.
correct?
Okay, so then, refresh my memory, what do we have as the current standard for side yards for low density?
For the standard R1 zone, I know I'm going to get this wrong. I believe it's, look for Ricky or George. I'm sure George knows. 5 feet on both sides, George?
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm just trying to think of how many over the last year or two we have approved going 4 and 3, and if they've always been very low density, or medium density, so that we kind of are, you know, setting ourselves up to vote the way we have been voting, versus all of a sudden, you know, changing our vote. Has there been any thought given, and this is random again, any thought given to telling the developers that if they're going to make such small side yards, they need to have some sort of fence on the front? A lot of the older homes in Clovis have an L-shaped fence in the front where you can put your toter in the front of your house, but it's still behind the fence, so you're not breaking any codes. I mean, has there been any thought on trying to do that if they want to have such small side yards?
There hasn't been any discussion thus far, no.
Okay. I mean, I'm just looking at possible options. That's at least another option. I couldn't imagine, and looking at your other comment on here on having something set in stone for an 1,800 square foot lot, I would hope we would never have to actually codify that. I couldn't imagine having anything that small. I can't even imagine a 4,500 square foot lot, much less 1,800. In terms of the side yards, I don't know that I would necessarily vote against it, given the propensity that we've had to vote for 4 and 3. I do hear all the other commissioners' comments on that. But I do have to weigh in what we've heard from PD and what we've heard from fire, in that it doesn't cause a problem for them to get to the backyard. Because let's be honest, they'll go through their garage, they'll break whatever they need to break to get to where the fire is. A toter's not, you know, not something that can't be moved if it has to be. But I'll leave it up to you guys to see if you want to change what's on the table.
So I guess there is a question on line 6, where it talks about this swing garages being 10 by 20.
Yeah, I think that is an error. It's a good catch. The intent there was to specify the setback for the swing garage, but I think it's probably a good catch that we would change that to be the standard garage size of 20 by 20.
Any more discussion from the commission? I'd like to open it up to the public, for those that are for this. I see none in the chamber.
There is no one online.
Okay, those against?
No one online.
Okay. I will move it back to the commission for motions.
Mr. Chairman, just one additional comment for me. I think we're probably talking about semantics, but I want to be clear that when I discuss the fact that there have been 4-foot or 4 and 3 foot setbacks approved by the council, those have all been through the PRD process, which are, by their definition, one-off, sort of write your own standards, subdivision by subdivision criteria. So the city council has not said that a 4 and a 3 is their standard. The point was that it is a standard that has been found to be acceptable, at least on an individual basis, as has come forward for consideration and approval. So I didn't want you to think that there was a universal finding that this was the city's standard, because that has not been brought before either your commission or the council previously.
So just for clarification, we could make a motion to change that back to 5 feet.
You can, absolutely. You also made a reference to public safety and protection. I know our fire department is here. If you have any questions directly for them, they're happy to answer them.
If they'd like to comment, that they're welcome. Yeah. Okay. Back to the commission. Any further discussion? Okay, I open it up for motions, or a motion, whatever. I'll make a motion to change the side yard setback on the garage side back to 5 feet, from 4 feet on it back to 5 feet.
Just for clarification of 5 and 3 then.
Correct.
I'll second the motion.
For clarification, would that motion include the correction to the dimension on the swing garage size?
Yes.
Thank you.
And just to be clear, we're voting on all the standards with that, those two exceptions.
Yes.
Changes, thank you.
And we have presented here a single resolution addressing both the objective standards and the code amendments. So I just want to clarify that the motion and second were relative to the entire resolution.
Yes. Concur.
Very
Yes.
good.
Yes.
Okay, motion by Chair Hinkle, second by Commissioner Bedstead to approve the single-family objective standards and development code amendments as presented in Ordinance Amendment 2021-02, with a modification to the swing car garage sizes to be 20 by 20, and to modify the garage side setback for the R1 MD zone to 5 feet. Chair Hinkle,
Yes.
Commissioner Bedstead,
Yes.
Commissioner Antuna,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hatcher.
No.
Motion carries 4-1.
Okay, moving to item number 4, CUP 2020-007, a request for a conditional use permit for the construction of a 9,400 plus or minus square foot ambulatory surgery center on a portion of approximately 2.7 acre parcel located at 570 North Magnolia Avenue, AMEL Investments applicant, and Marlette Associates representative. Staff?
Thank you, Chair, members of the Commission. Good evening. I would like to begin by first indicating for the record that the Commission this evening received a memo with the updated conditions of approval for this conditional use permit. It primarily involves just one condition, that's condition 8 of the project. After the staff report was published, the applicant was able to review the staff report and conditions and wanted staff to make one clarification pertaining to the reciprocal access between both properties, property to the south, the subject property, and the property to the north. And therefore, staff proposed the modification you see there in the updated conditions under item or condition 8. As indicated in the introduction, the project is located in the northwest area of North Magnolia and Herndon Avenues. It is within a portion of a 2.7 acre site. The applicant is proposing the council's approval this evening of a 9,400 square foot ambulatory surgery center. This building is identified on the map there in red. It will be directly adjacent to the existing medical building immediately to the west. The new building will be handling specific services, including surgery, pain management, and certain diagnostic procedures. And these services will not require the patient to stay overnight at this facility. When staff, as planners, when we look at projects, one of the main critical items that we look at is parking and making sure that the project is still meeting our development code standards. So just overall, the existing site that you see here on the map is providing a total of 166 stalls. The project and the building there, which is roughly just under 26,000 square feet, as you see there in the bottom right, it requires 104 stalls. So therefore, you can see that the applicant provided substantial stalls above the required by code. The new proposed building before you tonight requires an additional 38 stalls. So 104 for the existing building, 38 for the proposed building, for a total of 142. Just to provide you with some quick numbers, the new building will remove 29 stalls, but will add 8, just based on the configuration. And I'll show you the site plan here towards the end of how that's going to look. But therefore, overall, with both buildings, the site will provide 145 stalls. So therefore, meeting our development code standards on parking requirements. And here on this side, right in the top right, top left corner of the site plan, this is the reciprocal access where it will be modified through the site plan review process, where both properties will be able to enjoy that reciprocal access at this location. The 29 stalls that will be removed will be in this general area here. As you can see here, with this new building, these new 8 stalls will be provided. The trash enclosure will be relocated with this project to a different place on the site, but this will also provide an additional 5 stalls towards the southern part of it. In terms of the building elevations, the proposed architectural design of the surgery center building will be compatible with the existing medical office building. The final review of the proposed project, including the elevations, will occur during the site plan review process, which the applicant, I believe, has submitted already to staff. So I got that confirmation. Therefore, staff recommends that the commission this evening approve conditional use permit 2020-007, subject to the conditions of approval labeled as attachment 1. And for clarification, it's the updated conditions in tonight's memo that staff's recommended that the commission approve. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions for staff? Commissioner Atuna, do you have any questions for staff?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Okay. I'll open it up now to the applicant. Is the applicant here would like to speak?
My name is Ron Marlette. I'm an applicant and architect for the planning and design of most of the buildings in that general area, Magnolia, North and Herndon. Any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Yes, you said that you've applied on here from operation hours 7 to 4 p.m. and that you're thinking about you may be planning on staying open longer.
I think hours of operation, we've got one of the members of the ASC here tonight, so any hours of operation or operational questions probably better answered by Eric Linval here.
Okay.
Anything regarding planning, parking, adjacencies, use of properties, we're pretty versed at. Go inside the building and go to work, talk to that guy.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, I do have a question, since you mentioned, I was considering asking it to the city staff, but since you said parking, just curious, will there be any designated spaces? I mean, given it's an ambulatory surgery center, a lot of people probably aren't going to drive themselves home after they've maybe been under general anesthesia. So are any of the designated spaces going to be reserved as like pickup spots to help just from a workflow standpoint?
We'll have a spot that maybe George can point at. We have a patient arrival and departure location where we can drop them off at the curb and pick them up at the curb.
Okay.
I think here again, what I'm understanding, I'm learning a little bit about the processes inside. There are days there will be numerous procedures, smaller, easier procedures, people moving in and out. And then there'll be days where there might be a series of larger procedures, knee replacements, let's say, 2 or 3 in a day, where we would expect somebody to drop off, come back 4 or 5 hours later. So we don't have any designated parking for patients. We do have patient drop-off. It'll be covered. I think there's an OSPOD 3 requirement that suggests your drop-off and pickup has to be a covered area. So you see the drive aisle is sort of in the northeast corner of that building. That would be the patient drop-off and pickup area.
Perfect, thank you. Any other questions for Rob? Thank you. Yes, please.
Eric Lindvall, thanks for having me.
Eric, in the information that we have, states that you plan on being open from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. and possibly later. You'd like to change those hours. I might recommend that you put in some times now instead of having to come back and modify this later. So you may want to put in 8 p.m. I mean, it's up to you on how long you want the doors open, but at least you're being okay to be open that long on it instead of being open and having someone, because they're mad at you, come back and complain that you're open beyond 4 p.m.
So I'm happy to modify that if 8 p.m. is easier for everyone to deal with. That would just probably be an unusual day. Most of the time, we try to wrap it up by 4 and people are out of there before 5. I mean, the business operations are pretty much through by 3 maybe. But there may be occasions in years to come where if the center's busier and things, to your comment, that we may need to be open till later. So are you recommending that we change that in the document tonight?
If you change that tonight from 7 to 8 p.m.,
okay.
That leaves you room in there for you to do what you need to do. And that if you change something in your operations, you don't have to come back here and start over.
Okay, then I agree. If we could change that to 8 p.m., if that makes it simpler, then we'll do that now.
Okay. All right, that's the only thing I had. Does anybody else have anything?
No question.
I don't have a question. I was just going to say, you might want to say like 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. So in case you want to start earlier, just
Okay.
give yourself a little bit of wiggle room. It's a recommendation.
Maybe you can get out of bed earlier, but okay, yeah, we'll do it. Okay.
That's better to have extra
More
time.
leeway. Okay.
Let's have a big window, a big open window.
Great, thank
So
you.
and that doesn't affect other things, just having those there. It's not like you have a band out front at 5 in the morning,
Right,
you know,
okay.
marching up and down the parking lot. It just leaves you more flexibility for your business,
Excellent, okay,
okay?
we'll do.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd like to open it up now for the general public. In the chamber, is there anybody that'd like to talk in favor of? Is there anybody else?
Nobody online.
Okay. Anybody like to talk in opposition? See none in the chamber?
None online.
Okay, bring it back to the commission. Any other more discussion on this? Okay, open it up for some motions, or a motion.
I'll make a motion, that we, approve COP 2020-07, with the changes noted, during the discussion.
5 to 8?
Yes.
Okay, 5 a.m. to 8 p.m.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Cunningham, second by Commissioner Hatcher to approve conditional use permit 2020-07 with a modification to the hours of operation to allow opening between 5 a.m. and 8 p.m. Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hatcher,
Yes.
Commissioner Antuna,
Yes.
Commissioner Bedstead,
Yes.
Chair Hinkle.
Yes. Okay, any old business?
No.
New business? And we adjourn tonight at 7:04.